So today we're going to talk about miracles a little bit. Just want to show you some pieces of Jesus' life as we move toward Easter. And just have a couple of these I want to show to you. In John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, it says, "On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, 'They have no wine.'" So, Jesus shows up to a wedding with his folks, right? Got his disciples with him. He's hanging out, this big celebration. I mean, when they did a wedding in Jerusalem or in Cana or anywhere, when the Jews did a wedding, they did one, man. It was a party. And it lasted for days. Usually 6 to 8 days they would have this celebration. And so somewhere in that, Jesus shows up. And they've been going at it long enough that they're about to run out of wine. Which is kind of important, you know? It's one of those responsibility things for the guy that, is putting this whole party on. And how you do these parties, that translates to status in the city and you're standing among your peers and things like that. So there's a little on the line. When we look at something as just common, I mean, so what? Go drink water, But to them, to the guy that was doing this, man, it's important. And let's face it, the water they had as an option was just tepid, Just lukewarm is the word you would use in Revelation for it. Not really tasty. But they ran out, or they're running out. And so she says to Jesus, "They have no wine." Jesus' response, this is interesting, and often misunderstood, I'll say, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And she said, and his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Okay, so on the one hand, it looks like, if we take this into our culture, it looks like Jesus is reprimanding his mom a little bit, which would be a little bit not appropriate because you're supposed to honor your mom. So if we took it that way, then it'd be out of character. But a lot of people do. But on the other hand, we see the mother in the next verse kind of ignoring what Jesus has said to her. Oh, he's going to do something, y'all just do what he says. But we have to look at it in their culture, not in ours. So one of the things here is Jesus never said he's not going to do something. Catch that? He just said it's not time yet for me to do something. Maybe the wine hadn't completely run out yet. And so the miracle would be tainted by, well, maybe there was still some left. Whatever the reason is, Jesus' response to, for one thing, the woman thing is just, it's a respectful address. We don't look at it that way now. We would look at it as a little disrespectful to look at your mom and say, "Woman, I got to tell you, me personally, I would never do that. Mom, I would never say that to you." So just in case she watches this, I would never look at my mom and say, "Woman." I don't even look at my wife and say, "Woman." I might do it as a joke, but yeah, I sleep around her. So, this is a respectful way for him to talk to her. It was okay. He wasn't doing anything wrong here. And that next line, what does it have to do with me? Well, Jesus is God, wrapped in flesh. He's got a plan. He's got his way of doing things. And I think this is so impactful when you think about this. Jesus showed up at the wedding knowing what he was going to do and knowing when he was going to do it. And he didn't need his mother to tell him what to do. Some of you get that. He did not need mom to tell him when to act as God. So there was a little bit of, this is my thing. I'm going to do this how I have planned to do this, and, thanks, Mom, but we're going to do it on my schedule. We see early on, like right here, that Mary isn't given special access or influence over God. He's got his plan. She's still not given special access to God or influence over God. He's got a plan. We all have the same access to God. And he's got a plan for us. So even in this common event, he's like, not yet. My hour hasn't come. Not yet. And his mother, realizing the tone of voice and what he's saying to her, that it wasn't a reproof, but just a not now kind of thing, turns to the servants and says, do what he says. She's stepping out of it. She gets it. She knows it's his thing, and she needs to step aside and let God work. And tells the other folks, just do what he says. I would give that advice to everybody. Just do what God says. You want a miracle? You want to see something happen? Just do what he says. Just trust him that in his time, the absolute perfect right time, he's going to do the absolute perfect right thing. And how many times do we actually trust him with that? I mean, really? How much anxiety and stress do we bear because we don't trust him with that? We have a society that is wrapped up like a spring, man. I mean, people are just tense. God doesn't want that for us. His hour will come. His timing will happen. What do we need to do? Just whatever he tells us to. And if we're going to do what he tells us to, we have to be listening to him. Ooh, we have a responsibility in this. And it's not to coach him, and it's not to advise God. It's to listen to God and do what he says. So let's go on and see what happens. Now, there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to his servants, fill the jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. So it wasn't just like Jesus found some other wine and said, hey, it's over here. The servants knew that they put water in the jugs. They knew they filled them up with water. And now they draw something out, and they're supposed to take it to the master of the feast. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first. Then when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. Because after a few runs at the good wine, they can't taste it anymore anyway. Alcohol has a way of doing that. So then you can substitute the cheap stuff in there, okay? And so that's just the common thing. And at least that's what I hear about it. So, so poor one. But you have kept the good wine until now. So not only was it wine, it was the best wine. This, the first of his signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Not that they didn't believe in him before. Think about their faith was even more made sure. Okay? Just another confirmation of who they're following around. The first miracle he did in public, right here, turning water into wine, taking a common issue. That it would have a ripple effect to everybody that didn't have any wine anymore, but really, it only really affected the bridegroom and his family. Because they were the ones that were going to be embarrassed. Because they didn't plan properly. Jesus stepped in to this situation. One family. Just because they're going to be embarrassed. Because they didn't plan properly, God intervened. God ever intervened for you when you didn't plan properly? Yeah, amen. He's a God that does that. He doesn't expect us to be perfect. As a matter of fact, He knows we're not. He knows every mistake we're ever going to make. He knows every dumb thing we're ever going to do. And He has planned for it. So while we're taken by surprise by our stupidity sometimes, the depth of it surprises me sometimes for myself, right? So, I never surprise God, though. Never a surprise for Him. He knows every high point I'm going to have. He knows every low point I'm going to have. And He's provided me a way through every one of them. My job, do what He says. To do what He says, I have to listen to Him. To listen to Him, I have to have a relationship. Pretty simple stuff when you break it down. And this just through this one event. So, one thing I want you guys to get at is God can take ordinary things and make them extraordinary. We look around at other people and we get used to the fact that there are other people. How often do you stop and just sit down and think, this person across from me, this person over there, they are a gift from God to my life. They are a miracle walking around on feet. That's what they are. And then we take that and we really feel the fact of who they are. And then we start thinking, and God put them into our lives. Put them in my life. Not only that, God wants me to treasure them like He does. And it's so much easier to treasure people when you realize that they're a miracle. That they bear the image of God just like we do. And on that note, I want to move on to one other thing really quick here. In John 9, 1 through 12. As He passed by, He saw a man blind from birth. And His disciples asked Him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, He spit on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then He anointed the man's eyes with the mud. And He said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and he washed, and he came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? And some said, it's he. Others said, no, but he's like him. He kept saying, I'm a man. So they said to him, how were your eyes open? And he answered, the man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and I washed and received my sight. And he said, where is he? And he says, I do not know. The story goes on, and it's a really cool story. But I just, and there's an hour of this I could unpack right now. This is an incredible story. There's so many nuances to it, and so much to talk about. But not necessarily where I wanted to go in context today. But we saw the commonality of changing that water to wine to basically bless this one family and by extension bless everybody else there. But now, as we're thinking about the common being made extraordinary, look at this. He takes a man, a beggar, in society of Jesus' time. When you were begging, you're at the bottom of the food chain. Okay? You're just actually a hair above lepers at this point. At least you get to hang around in society. But you're blind. You know way you're going to have a job. Not then. Can't support yourself, so you're on the street begging every day for food or to get some money to get food. This is your life. That's your career path. From birth, this is a man. from birth he's been blind. The disciples, their first thought is maybe he sinned and that's why he's blind. I want you to follow that for a second. For him to be blind from birth, he would have had to sin in the womb. I'm not seeing that. I have a problem with that particular theology of sinning in the womb. But setting that aside, they then said, well, maybe the parents sinned, so they were cursed by a blind child. This is how people thought. This is how Jesus' disciples thought. What do you think the culture thought? These people were throwaway people to them. Nobody cared about the blind and the lame. They were the outside of society. I would love to tell you, and Jesus said the only reason he's blind is so right here, right now, I can heal him. So the glory of God and the power of God can be shown among you. It's the only reason he's blind. Nobody sinned to cause his blindness. I want you to think about something for a second. Do we live in a world where there are throwaway people? Still. Yeah, we do. And it's not just out there. There are a lot of different ways that people look at people as throwaway people. Babies. Okay? When we talk about abortion, throwaway humans. That's what they're doing. Now, at best, they're throwing away humans. At worst, they're actually sacrificing these babies on the altar of what? Convenience? It's not just babies. What about the poor? So many people look at the poor as throwaway people. Some folks will look at folks that live on a mountain as throwaway people if they live in the big cities. And I got to tell you, we are not. None of them are. The babies deserve to have a life. God put them there for a reason. The poor deserve to be respected as human beings that God created. And help to the extent that we can help. We are told to look after the weak, to defend the defenseless. This is what we're supposed to be as Christians. This is who God is. Go look at Israel in the Old Testament. Look at Ezekiel. Look at Jeremiah. Look at Micah. And what does God over and over again say about his people? He speaks over and over again about idolatry. That's a big thing. And in the same breath, he speaks about the mistreatment of the poor and the defenseless. The people spilling innocent blood through bribery, coercion, rigged courts, all this kind of stuff. All targeted at the throwaway people. I'm going to tell you, God does not have throwaway people. Every human being is deserving of respect because they're created by him. And that's what I wanted you to see this. Jesus looked at people with compassion. And we need to look at people with compassion. Jesus looked at people and saw the opportunities to show his glory and his grace and his mercy. It doesn't change for us. You and I have the Holy Spirit of God within us. Job is to go show his glory, his grace, his mercy to the people who would be thrown away. To every person. Because that's what God wants. That honors him and what he did. So, with just two examples of what Jesus did, we see God's compassion. We see God's power to transform lives. We see his ability to relate to us and our problems and our issues and care. And we see his amazing love spread out and shown. There's two examples. I promise you I could go on to leading in service about the love and the compassion of God that is shown in the New Testament. But we're going to end here. I just want you to think about this and go ahead and pray. just